Welcome everyone. Hope you all are doing great. And thank you for tuning in with Recro. This is Ankita. I'm working as a senior software engineer at Swiggy and as a part of Recro as well, which is a developer focused organization. And here we are trying every day to connect talented developers with fast growing startups like Dunzo, Swiggy, Udan, CureFit, and a lot more similar startups. So today we all have a chance to get deeper understanding of what progressive web applications are, how they work, and how can they help businesses succeed. So today we have Ankush with us, who is a software developer. He's working at Amazon in Seattle, US. He comes with over 7 years of experience as a software engineer, and in addition to all this, he is the technical co founder of a product based startup called Udec that's in Los Angeles. And he has also worked as a web developer at Disney Hotstar. So before I hand over to Ankush, I'd like to walk you guys through the platform. So please look at the right hand side of your screen. There you can see multiple options in the side menu, which are session. So this session is divided into four parts basically. So one is the just the introduction part, and after that we'll have the presentation given by Ankush, and then would come a more interesting thing that would be live coding, and then eventually we'll move on to the questionnaire in the end. So there won't be any Q&A session in between the presentation or the live coding, but if you guys have any misunderstanding of a particular topic or what just Ankush explained in a particular slide, then you can use the raise hand option in the right hand side just below the sessions option to raise your hand, and I would let you to speak, and it would be up to you if you want to turn on your camera. Then uh, there's a chat section, there's an attendee section. You can view all the list of all the people who are attending this session currently, and then you can chat with us and the other attendees as well. And when it comes to questionnaires, so there is a separate section for that. So we'll be taking all the questions only if you are adding that to the questionnaire section. So you can let me know if you have any doubts in between. You can you can put that in chat, and I'll reply to that. And for this session, I'll be sharing a feedback link form with you all. So I'd request you to kindly fill that form so that we can know about your feedback, and if there are any improvements, we'd like to work on them. Also, along with that, I'll be sharing all our social handles, the Twitter link, the Instagram link, and we also have a community on WhatsApp. So it'll be very easy to connect over WhatsApp also. So we'll be sharing those links too. And in the end, I'll also share profile links for LinkedIn profile link for Ankush and my link as well, so that if you have any doubts, you can directly connect with Ankush over LinkedIn, and that'd be easy for you. So now I'd like to hand over it to Ankush.
Hey guys, very good afternoon. I hope you're having a fabulous weekend. Thank you, Ankita, for the. So I am going to share my screen. Let me know when you guys can see it, because after this I'll not be able to see AirMeet anymore. Are you guys able to see the screen?
Yes, Ankush. If anyone is not able to see the screen, please mention that in the chat.
Okay, I think people can see it. Awesome. So welcome. Today, like always, I have one of the web topics planned for discussion. And today I wanted to talk about, like Ankita said, about PWAs that make your web apps better than before. So let's jump in. Right. The topic was better web for users as well as developers, and we'll cover why for the users and why for the developers. And by developers, I mean the engineers who are solving problems, particularly business problems, and how PWAs can help them. So PWAs have a very good support in almost all major browsers now. This wasn't the case a few years ago, But now, since the technologies are becoming adopted and becoming standardized really quickly, I think it's a good time to invest in learning PWAs and seeing if your app is a good candidate or if your web app is a good candidate for conversion into a PWA. So Ankita went quite deep into my background. I'll quickly cover my details. My name is Ankush. You can almost find me everywhere as Ankush Dharkar, be it Twitter, GitHub, LinkedIn, whatever. Feel free to connect. I'm currently working as a software developer at Amazon. Just started this week, so very new here. I also am a technical co-founder at UDEC, which is a consumer internet startup based out of Pasadena and Los Angeles. And in my free time, I love to, coach and mentor people at Real Dev Squad, which is basically an open source, free community of awesome developers who are just at the squad to learn. We, do data structures and algorithm problems. We work together on real applications. We deploy them. If you go to realdevsquad.com and all the sister websites, every code there is deployed by a squad member. So we help each other. It's a mix of people of all experience levels, just willing to learn and put out projects. So we are going to participate in Hacktoberfest as well. So if you're interested in that, maybe in chat you'll find a link to join our Discord group. So definitely join and participate. It will be a good experience for everybody. So I have a question for the audience. When do you guys prefer to use native apps over web apps? So when do you want like to use your Android or your iOS apps over, let's say, the mobile websites? Can you guys maybe like mention a few points where native apps definitely wins over the web? Very nice. So yes, loading speed, definitely, if you're using it frequently. Abhishek, can you elaborate when you say if you're using it frequently, we use apps? Why do you, if you're using frequently, why do you like to go to the apps? Why not the web? Like ordering food, okay. Because if you're able to understand these differences, right, that is when you'll start appreciating why we should be learning PWAs. Experience is better as native components of the device. Okay, when we need to interact more with the system or OS. Agreed. Okay, so I think you are talking about some, highly capable APIs which the native apps get access to, which web doesn't, right? We don't have that much freedom with PWAs. Okay. Cool. And when do you use web apps over native apps? When are some use cases when you prefer to use the web app over native apps? Less storage on phones. Yeah, great point, Suraj. When phone storage becomes a premium and you don't want to like waste that with bloated 100 MBs, 30 MBs of app, you tend to use web apps, which are very small and you get your job done and they're not there anymore. Can convert already website into a native app, already logged in from web. Okay, that's another good use case when you're already logged in. So you have your session going on. So you just like to continue using the website. When you want to access very, very short time, delivery constraints. Delivery constraints. Why would you as a user worry about the delivery constraints? You have to do only CRUD applications and want to save device space. Yeah, great points. So I guess, we understand one place the native app wins for sure and the other place web wins for sure. So basically, if you plot a graph, right, between the capabilities and the reach of these apps. So the native apps are locked into their gardens. So iOS is locked into the iOS ecosystem. Android is locked into your Android phones. If you have any desktop apps, they are limited to your desktop. I mean, the companies, they share data, of course, but usually if you build apps, then you need multiple teams to work on multiple products so that the reach increases, right? But for the same platform, the reach of a native app is very, very limited. But the capabilities, like you guys mentioned, is high because you have access to all these wonderful APIs that can let you do more things. You have access to file storage, you have access to geolocation, you have access to maybe notifications. So the app is able to do a lot more than what a website does. But a website by nature, is very accessible and it reaches a very wide audience for the same code base. But like we said, the capabilities are low. So there's a divide between the native apps and web apps. And that is what the PWAs, they tend to fix. So PWA has the capabilities of a native app and it has the reach of the web apps. And that is what we are going to dive deep into. So let's see, like, what do you guys understand with a PWA? So a lot of people will write progressive web apps, but what do you mean by that? Does anybody want to like maybe attempt putting out a few ideas of what you understand by a PWA, right? A progressive web app. What does it mean? App shell. App shell is one way of doing it, but PWA is much more than app shell. So what is it that the PWA is solving, or what is it that the PWA does, right? I mean, of course, like a lot of you are not going to like it, but I mean, that is why you're here, right? To understand it thoroughly. But I want to like see what it is, experience as an app, but light as a website. Yeah, great point. Giving experience similar to native app with basic knowledge. It's a hybrid app with push notifications available. That's a very close definition, Sahil. That's definitely closer than before. It's not just the push notification. It's a lot more APIs that is accessible to a PWA than to a regular website. Offline support gets better when you use it. Yeah, very great point, Rajat. So yes, basically PWAs are apps that are built with the web technologies we already know as web developers, right? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Almost nothing new. It's the same stuff which we've been building our applications for the web. These applications also live on the web. These are not downloaded by default, right? The source location is same as where our websites were before. But these websites have access to the native level APIs, right? So just like how you have notifications, you have geolocation. Geolocation is coming soon. Now you have background syncing. You have offline, you have cache support. All these great APIs which were available to native apps are now available to us as web developers, and we are able to like leverage them to create better experiences for our users. So these are typical websites, but with enhancements which are progressive in nature. So even if those capabilities are not supported by the user's host environment, they can still use the website as a regular website without having all these nice bells and whistles. And we should, make sure that our app is progressively transitioning into becoming a better PWA. So when you think about PWAs, always think about the fire, right? And this is I think this comes from the Google Developers Forum. So basically, if you have a PWA, it has to be fast, right? You click the button, the app needs to come up instantly, right? Installable. This is one of the most important distinctions of a PWA. When you have a PWA, you should be able to install it down into your machine, be it a desktop or be it a phone. Generally, phones have been using PWAs a lot, but desktops are also up there, right? So when you see a website, you should be able to install, and it's a very weird, mental model to wrap your head around, which is how do you have a website that gets installed, right? The website by definition is something that gets served when you request that resource. So how do you install something which comes in real time? And that is what we'll see in our code, how we can get we can get to it. R stands for reliable, right? So when you open the app, you should never see network not available. You should never see cannot access the resource or whatever. For example, like one of my favorite examples is traveling at airports, right? I download my boarding pass. I download, or like if I have layovers, I have all these different flights which have to take place at a particular time. And sometimes at an airport, maybe you don't have good network coverage, or maybe you have like used 45 minutes of Wi-Fi, and all of a sudden you open up the app and you're not able to access very, very important critical details because whoever developed those apps, I don't know, somehow they missed it, or maybe I'm using bad apps, right? But that is information that could have been stored offline. Simple things, right? Time of my flight number, number of minutes to get to my gate, or something like that. So reliability of the app is very important. Google Docs, right? If you have noticed, even if you lose your network or if you have a flaky network, you can still continue working on the doc, and it updates when you connect back to the network. So right now, we are living in an age where attention span is very important, right? And if something interrupts our flow of working, it's very difficult to get back into that flow. Imagine if you were writing a Google Doc and you lost internet for like 5 seconds and it said, oh, because there is no net, you cannot type anymore. You completely lose the flow of what you were typing. You cannot access what you've typed so far. You cannot continue with your work. Engaging, right? So these PWAs, they have to engage the user on almost the same level as native apps do, so that people want to keep coming back to these apps. And you're providing good experiences and you're providing rich, engaging content. A typical example would be, maybe you have a movies PWA where you like see a latest episode or latest movie coming out automatically. You're in a bus, you've forgotten about having to download the latest movie. You open up your app and automatically the last episode or the newest podcast or whatever it is, it's there for you to consume without worrying about your flaky network while you're traveling. Right? That is a great experience because you can just get to your content without having to wait again to download something. I'm pretty sure many of us would have been in frustrating experiences, right? Where we start downloading something and we are traveling, so we keep losing and getting back our network, and then because of that we never get the resource which we wanted to use in maybe that 5, 10, 20 minutes of traveling. Have you guys had this kind of experience before? You've been in a metro, the metro goes underground, you lose network, and all of a sudden maybe the song you wanted to listen to, or maybe the YouTube video you wanted to listen to is just gone, right? So that happens a lot, and if you can avoid that, that will be a great experience for all your users. So if you want to install your app as a PWA, there is an install criteria that you have to meet, right? First, it has to be over HTTPS only, which means, and this is there for security reasons, because if you are going to cache stuff offline and there is some malicious user who's not malicious, is a malicious attacker who changes that data because it was not served over HTTPS, that creates complications going down the line. But luckily, when you serve PWA over localhost, you can get away with HTTP. So for development, things are still just fine. But when you finally deploy your app, it has to be over HTTPS. So if you are facing problems installing your PWA, check if you are serving it over HTTPS or not in your production environment. It has to have something called a web app manifest, which is nothing but a simple JSON file. You just put it up in your HTML page, and there's a particular format to it which will cover. And if you have those things correct, you can start installing your app. Then it needs something called a service worker. If you have, who here knows what a main thread is? Right? Have you guys heard about web workers? Have you heard about main thread? Like, are these terms new to you, or are you very comfortable with them? Comfortable, new. Oh, a lot of people are new with it. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I would highly encourage you guys to go and learn about what main thread is in browsers, right? In your web apps, and how the JavaScript works with your CSS engine and produces the web pages that you see. So to offload heavy tasks, the browsers now give you support for having worker threads, which work different from your main thread. So main thread submits jobs to your worker threads over post messages, and then worker threads do it parallelly. And whenever they're done, they post a message back into the main thread, which can read it whenever available and use the results. So service worker is just type of worker thread, which has access to particular APIs, and it has a particular capability which we'll discuss, which lets you create PWAs. And also, if you've not already installed it, which is I think obvious, you can only install something if it's not already installed before. So manifest typically has a particular format. If you quickly go through it, it has to have a short name. Short names are things which show up, let's say, on the launcher, in the taskbar, places where space is a premium. So you want to show quick small names of whatever apps you're using. Name is the big name which gets to your app which you install. So maybe on the home screen, the full name comes up, but when you're looking into the activity switches, the small name will show up. Description, what that app does. Icons, so different size icons of what your app is about. Then you have a start URL. So start URL, you basically say when somebody clicks that icon, what is the page that should get opened into the app. And if I put just slash over there, it will be fine. But does anybody have any idea why I also put source equals PWA? I mean, source equals PWA is not a requirement for logging. No, not for logging. Whether it is right, it is for tracking. So if somebody is going on the desktop site, right, if they're going to the index page versus somebody is opening the icon and then going to the index page, how do you differentiate between those two users? So if you have a query parameter, you can very easily do analytics, and then that helps you decide how many people are using your PWA versus how many people are actually using your desktop site. So that helps you make decisions in the team later on. Then you can have a background color. You can have display standalone. So that means whether you want it to appear like an interface of your not regular applications, or do you want it to like open up in full screen? So there are like different parameters that you can put. There is also a display minimal, which will put the interface with back and forward buttons. By default, there is no back and forward buttons if you put standalone. So we have to put navigation through your app, which is proper for the user, just like a native app, right? A native app, you click around the hamburger menus or nav bars and navigate in your app. Same thing has to happen in your PWA. So if you put standalone and you wanted to make, you want the app to look like a regular web app, sorry, not a web app, as a native app, it will no longer have the address bar. It will no longer have your back forward buttons or reload buttons or anything. That entire bar will be gone. Guys, I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat. If you have questions, do make sure you put it in the questions tab on the right so that when we do go over questions, nothing gets missed. Otherwise, when you go through all the chat messages, maybe some questions will no longer be there because they've gone on top or something like that. Scope. So scope is what level of scope do you want to cover for this PWA. Theme colors, you can like assign themes, and there are shortcuts. Shortcuts are basically those quick actions which happen when you long press your app icon, right? You must have seen, like, if you long press Gmail, it will say compose new email, read last email, or something like that. They're like quick actions that you can get to. There's something relatively new in PWAs, and they've become pretty standard and pretty usable now. At right now, I believe the support is only there in Android, not in Android and desktop, not in iOS, but I could be wrong. So service worker, right? A service worker is nothing but a client-side programmable proxy, which means it sits between the real network and your application, and it's able to cache resources and basically like proxy every request that goes through. So that helps it cache and put in a caching policy of what things you want to keep for offline usage versus what you want to like fetch from the network. Actually, not just for offline usage, what things you don't want to fetch from the network over and over. And it's a type of web worker that executes separately from the main thread. So like I mentioned, right, the main thread has a different scope. Your service worker has a different scope, and they communicate using post messages. So typically, if you have a web page, it will ask the service worker if that request is available. The service worker will, if it's registered, will decide if it is going to fetch things from a cache or if it's going to fetch from a network. And we'll dive a little bit into the code to like see one version of how it works. There's a lot more nuance to it. You'll have to decide when you're going to update a resource, when you're going to delete the cache, when you're going to just use the cache. So like a lot of things that you have to decide as the developer, but we'll just like quickly see what service worker lets us do. Life cycle of a service worker is very, very simple. So basically, when you install the app for the first time, it's an installing phase. If something goes wrong while installing, it will immediately go into error. But if it doesn't, it goes in activated state. In activated state, it basically says the service worker is now ready for use. If nothing is really happening here, it will go into an idle phase. From idle phase, the browser can decide to terminate the service worker because it's not being used to free up resources for something else. But if a fetch request is made and the service worker is activated again, or if a message is posted from, let's say, a notification API, not notification, push API, then the service worker becomes activated again, and it will process it and keep doing this in a loop until all your things are done. So very straightforward. Basically, you have a service worker. Just keep it in mind. If you have developed for mobile apps before, you might be knowing this. But the activity which is generated, it is killed by the OS in mobile phones. So you cannot keep things available in local state. You cannot have a program that, let's say, has an object of everything happening, because on the rules of how to like dispose activity, the OS might say, okay, let's free up this activity because it's not being used. So you lose all that data. That's why it's important to like write it in a persistent store or a cache somewhere, so that when another activity for the similar work opens up, it can read from there and resume where the previous one left off. The same thing is true of a service worker. If the worker is terminated, you lose all the local data that you did in the service worker. So never store state as local objects. Always like use an index DB or use a cache API. Use something which is more persistent in nature. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. We also now have a periodic background sync API. What that lets us do is every, I think it's once in every 12 hours, you can actually hit automatically in the background a resource of your choice and download something which was changed without the user having to do anything, which is great, right? Let's say if like Twitter, right? If you are a very active user, as I said, like you're traveling, you forgot, maybe your data ran out, whatever it is. Maybe what it does is every 12 hours, it updates 50 most um, popular tweets in that time period. So when you pick up your phone, even without making a network request, that data is available to you to consume. You may not be able to interact with it much, which is also not completely true, because if you like it, maybe it doesn't immediately send a like. It stores it in some queue, and then when network becomes available, it will send it. But basically, the app becomes much more useful than just seeing network not available. So periodic background sync API lets you do that. That's just something to be aware about. And then notifications, right? Somebody mentioned that in PWAs you can have notifications. So there are two things that combined make it useful. One is the notifications API, which is from JavaScript. You can create and show notification to the user. And then there's a push API where the browser, actually the app tells the browser to subscribe to a channel, so that when updates happen on that channel, it gets a push, and then that push is read by the service worker and then triggers the notification API. I know a lot of things, but the basic idea is you are maybe not on that website, but your browser is running a process somewhere, or maybe you've installed the PWA, right? Because there's a service worker who's listening to events from an external source. Whenever that external source updates, it pushes to your subscribed channel saying something new has happened. Maybe you got a new email, maybe you got a new tweet, whatever it is. And then your browser sends you a notification. The service worker basically engages and sends you a notification, and clicking it takes you into your app then, just like how it happens on phones, right? So the beauty is when your website is no longer a part of a small tab on your browser, right, and it becomes its own window, it changes the user's way of thinking about the app. So what I mean is, when you are in the site and you can see that it's a website, you engage very differently with it, right? The trust is a little different. You know that that code is going to go away. You know what it has done so far may not get saved properly, whatever it is. There's like a sense of this is a web app, it's temporary. But when you are using a desktop level application, or when you're using a phone application, you are very, you rely on that app a lot. It feels local, it feels good, it feels performant, right? So when you do create PWAs, make sure that you change the UI and the UX away from just web. So one example I'll give you, right? You must have seen when you hit tab, a small outline appears in input boxes, in buttons, to like show you. We have to keep the site accessible, regardless of if it's a PW or not. But when users see the old 1980s outline, they immediately know that this is just a web app which is running in a shell. So we have to do extra work to make the experience of your PWA similar to how the native would look like, right? So PWA shows up in places like home screen, activity, docs, taskbars, wherever your normal apps show up, PWAs can show up there. And that is the whole idea, right? We are bridging the gap between native and web. All right, let's do some code quickly to go over, how to set up our PWA app. And even if things get skipped here, don't worry, because the YouTube video will be available, so you can always go and cover up from where we left off. So let me show you. I have a very simple website here. Nothing is happening right now. It's just an HTML site with the usual stuff and one CSS file. I can open up the CSS file and show you there's nothing much here, just a simple background, very, very simple style. Buttons I've given like a green color. That is it. So now the problem is I'm on Wi-Fi, right? And for PWA, to show you the offline cases, I either have to use the developer tools, or I have to disconnect my Wi-Fi. Like I don't want to disconnect my Wi-Fi because then we'll not be able to talk. So what I'll do is I'll run an HTTP server here, and we'll just switch off that server. So if we switch off the server and the browser is requesting resources and the server is not available, it's almost similar to saying the network is not there, right? You can see the server got started. I don't need the main CSS right now. Let's go back to index. Let's open up Chrome and localhost 8080. Again, simple HTML site, nothing much happening here. I'm going to remove it. There's a simple image which I have from our real desk cause GitHub page where we have different members. So that is, this one is my my particular image. And let's throw up that image here. Image shows up as expected. Good, no problem so far. And I'll just open up a class for putting a name later on, so that we can fetch maybe like an API and show up a name here. So now let's have our JavaScript also enabled, because we will need. So I'll show you what is there in the JavaScript right now. So nothing, right? It's just something that says JavaScript is loaded and it's working. This is basic setup we're doing to establish like a common ground. So then we'll slowly start adding features there. So you can see navigated to localhost, JavaScript is okay. Let's increase the font size here. This should be good. So you can see that JavaScript is indeed working. So far, so good. So now I said what were the two major steps required to install a PWA? Does anybody remember? Especially people who are new to PWA. If you've already worked with PWAs before, then okay, well, awesome. Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, there's 3 or 4 steps. So we have to be over HTTPS, right? But you can see that localhost is not over HTTPS. So like I said, for development purposes, localhost can be on HTTP. But when you deploy it to a domain, it has to be HTTPS. Right, so manifest, and the second is service worker. Perfect. So let's first include a manifest. Right, so manifest has a short name, description, icons, start URL, background color, the same thing which we saw. Displays what type of window you want it to become. Scope, theme color, shortcuts. So in my shortcuts, I'm just putting some dummy things which are saying, okay, see my current ticket, allows you to see the most active ticket. It will open up /current ticket with source PWA. And what's happening in the group, it will open up a /happening. These links do not exist because you're not going to use shortcuts. I'll show you rest of how the app looks. So that this is our manifest. To include it, we have to link it here as a manifest, right? Instead of style sheet, we do a manifest and just give a reference to that manifest. Okay, straightforward. So let's first see what is happening here in our application. If I go to my application, let's clear this completely. So we start from a fresh plate. Okay, manifest, right? So it's saying no manifest is detected. So I've saved my manifest file. I've included into my HTML, and now I'm going to reload. So the moment I reload, you can see that there's some minor errors because I think I just copied. Yeah, I put an image of 3000 by 3000, but I said it will be 192, so it's giving me a warning. Nothing major. So it's not also telling me that because there is no service worker, it cannot be installed, right? That means that because either the service worker does not exist or it doesn't exist for this page, there's going to be a problem. But you can see everything else showed up. The name is showing up, short name is showing up, start URL, theme color, background color, what kind of display, what kind of icons, all these details have started showing up. These are the icons I'm using in images. They're just the same icon everywhere. I've changed the size and renamed them. So nothing major there. Shortcuts are also coming up. They're also showing you what URL shortcut is showing up. So you can see that this domain, this URL is now able to read our manifest. So this seems to be correct. The second step is to install a service worker. So in order to do that, what I'll do is I'll go to my main.js. I'll remove this console log. We don't need it anymore. So to install a service worker, this is what we need to type, right? We need to see if we can indeed use a service worker from the navigator object. And when everything loads on the load event, I have to register this service worker. And for that, I need a file where the code for the service worker will live. Now, if you remember, I said service worker runs in a separate scope from the main thread, right? So all this code which we are currently running on our page is part of our main thread, right? The code that is the JavaScript which is going to run on our website. A service worker just lives separately. So we'll create the file separately. Right now, we'll not write much code into it. I will open it piece by piece when we need it. But we have to basically say, okay, navigator we are going to register a service worker which exists in this file, right? And right now, what will happen is the scope will be the entire domain, but there is a way of putting an optional object which will have scope of a subfolder. So sometimes, for example, wherever your domain is, your other code might exist in the build folder, or you might have an app or something like that, right? So you want your resources to be cached only one level down or two level down or something like that. In that cases, you can put optional arguments. But right now we'll say is we want to be able to cache anything in our scope. So that's why I'm not going to put that optional argument. And by default, I can scope it from wherever the service worker exists. So you'll notice that the service worker has to exist on the root level. If you're going to like have the top level accessible to everything, right? If you want the service worker to cache anything in its scope, it has to be on the highest level. Don't create a folder and put service worker there, because then it will become it cannot read things above its own level. So service worker will now exist on the same level as the index HTML. So just remember that. Okay. So because this is now also a promise, right? I hope anybody here who's not comfortable with promises, because if you're not comfortable with promises, please spend maybe a weekend and understand promises really, really well. They'll help you in your development, and also they make for interview questions, but they make for interview questions because they are an important necessity in web development. So so service worker register is basically a promise, which will, when it resolves, we can do whatever we want, right? So we can say, okay, just print out the message saying service worker registered with scope, registration.scope. And for errors also, we can catch these errors and retry or do something like that. But let's not worry about the errors right now. Okay, let's put it in main.js. Let's enable main.js. Okay, we'll come back and let's see what happens. So I refresh and I go to service worker, then you can see that there is a service worker that shows up here, right? It's saying when the service worker was initialized, what is its number. There are some tools to like test out pushing events, syncing events, and periodic sync events. It can show what is the last service worker that got deleted. And here I can also like try offline mode, update on reload, bypass one network, etc. So we have successfully registered a service worker. And you can see that now it's complaining that the page does not work offline. Can anybody tell me why it's complaining that the page does not work offline? We added a service worker, we put HTTPS, we put the manifest, right? But still it's giving us a warning that the page may not work offline. Yes, Ashish is absolutely right. Ashish is saying because you've not cached anything. So we have to explicitly tell the service worker what resources it has to cache. Otherwise, there is nothing to like show offline, right? Right now the cache storage is empty. So let's fix that. So we'll go to a service worker, and what we'll do is we'll write a list of URLs that we want to cache, and also we'll give this cache a particular ID so that we can help find its value and maybe invalidate it with something fresh from our resources or from timing or whatever. So basically like a tag saying, okay, this is the other resources I want to cache. When I cache them, this is the tag I want to apply to them. And right now we'll do the /index.html favicon main.css file main.js, this API, right? And you'll be wondering what this API does. So let's get to that first. What I'll do is if you use GitHub API, there's a very simple fetch call, which basically gets my user details. I'll show you, the data will show up. So when it comes back, how many people here don't know how fetch API works? Like why this line exists in fetch? Anybody has any doubts? A lot of people would have used something like Axios, right? Or you might have used HTTP request, the AJAX request from jQuery or something like that. Have you worked with fetch? I know fetch. Okay, very good. If you've not, then please read this up on MDN and make sure that you're comfortable with promises and how the fetch API works with the window object. That data could also be another. Yes. So let's go to the console. Let's save it. I saved it. Refresh. So you can see that it fetches my details from GitHub. So nothing too fancy, just basic details I've put. I can see what my name is, where I'm living, organizations. Like basically this comes from GitHub right now. So this is a real-time request, right? So yeah, console actually has a lot of helpful methods. There's console.table, info, there is error for like showing proper red errors in your console, and then log is of course always there. So yeah, that is also something you can, and you can also like apply CSS to your console and show more things than before. Can you please also add a timestamp? Okay. So anyway, like I'll put a timestamp, but what I want to show right now is the data which is coming in. Created at, no, that is my old user, that's fine. So this data which is coming in, it's coming from a GitHub API, right? So this is the URL. Now what I'll do is I'll get this data, I'll extract my name from it. So I'll do data.name, and I'll just attach it to our document.query selector name. So this is what I created in the index page as a simple placeholder for putting my name in. So if I do this right, then my name should just show up under my picture here. So let's reload. Saved it. Oh, I opened up the cache. That has actually cached it. Wait, let me do a hard refresh. So they can see the name show up, right? So the problem is if I disable the network, this data which you are seeing from GitHub will stop coming. So we'll go to our service worker and we'll say, okay, you know what, even if things are offline, I want this last data which came from this API to be available. Similarly, I want the user's image to be also available, even if there is no network. So for that, what we do, excuse me, is when we install, right? When we install our service worker for the first time, we'll come to what event.wait until does, but this is what is important first. We open that cache name which we gave above, that tag, right, to identify our details later. We open up a new cache, and this is also a promise. So we have to wait for it to open, and then we perform an add all URLs, and this also returns a promise. So because cache.all also returns a promise, if let's say we don't have wait until, right, will this function on line 13 return, or will it wait for this return to happen? So cache.addAll will return a promise. That much I'm telling you. What I'm asking you is, will you wait for the promise to resolve, or will it immediately return and finish executing this function? So Yash says it will wait. Harshit says it will wait. Not really. So promises are eventual values, right? So when you return that, it will just return a promise, and then on that promise you'll have to put dot then. But this function will end up returning immediately. Yeah, that is why we have to put event.wait until, because it reads what is the last promise that was returned, and it waits for this function to finish executing. Because we want this cache to be available to anything that happens after the service worker was installed. Does that make sense? Why we put event.wait until? If we don't put this, right, if this line does not exist, then what will happen is the cache will open, which is a promise. It will return a promise from inside, and this function on line 13 will immediately return. And then whatever is next in the service worker will start executing. But we don't want that. We want whatever resources we have asked to be cached first before the service worker proceeds. And if there's an error in caching them, we want the service worker to fail or have some kind of like graceful handling. But we don't like want to have some resources that got downloaded, but some resources that didn't get downloaded, because that will break the FIRE rule. The R will not be there, the reliability part. That if I will open this app tomorrow, I will indeed see something. So we want it to wait, or we want it to fail. Make sense? Remember those four things, right? Fast, installable, reliable, and engaging. So if things are not reliable, what is the point of having a service worker? Because we open up the service worker, the time of your flight is not there, when your flight is going to take off is not there, but your user picture is there. The app is not reliable anymore. Basically, you want to stop execution until a promise is resolved. It's like blocking function. Yes, exactly, yes. So like some libraries, they have some kind of a wait for function. It's exactly that. It's wait until. So until all promises from internally have resolved, don't let that function return. This is our install step, and this will cache all the main pages that we have. So let's see what happens when we reload now. So by the way, service worker, one thing you have to keep in mind is because it automatically caches in the background, you have to keep an eye on what current version of the service worker is running. If you make changes, in fact, I'll show you what happens. Let me put console.log hello, right? So I've changed the code. Now see how service worker 451 is running, right? If I reload, oh, that was a hard reload. I should have not done a hard reload. If I do a soft reload, you can see that 451 is still running, but it's saying, oh, your code has changed, and we'll activate this whenever all your other applications are closed, which are using the service worker. That is when we will remove 451 and put 452 into effect. Because you don't want to transition something when the user is still doing something with the current app, right? All right. So because I made changes onto my page, it's saying whenever you close this tab and you come back, 452 will become active. So I went to this code, right, of my site, and I changed some things there. The code is now new. Maybe I've added some offline support.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ankush.
Yeah.
Yash is saying if you could repeat the last point again.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. Showing lost connection, can't hear anything. Can you guys hear me? So what I'm saying is when you change the code and when the user comes and there's a service worker installed which has cached resources, right? When you reload the page and you've not written your invalidation policies properly, the page says, I have a service worker which is still running, which is still handling things for the page, but I can see the code has been changed. So maybe it's time to install a fresh service worker. But because you're already using an existing service worker, we can't just swap it and give the user a broken experience. So we'll wait reliably until the user has completely stopped using this app. That is when we'll remove the 451 service worker and put 453. Because let's say if I'm using this, right, Ankush Dharkar is cached, and maybe the username has changed and it becomes Dharkar Ankush or something very different. If as I'm using the app, all of a sudden you change things, you basically are like pulling the carpet under the user, right? And they're like, oh, I had my details, now everything is gone, there's a new UI, I don't know what's happening. You don't want to give that kind of an experience. So once the user has closed down the app and when they come back, then is when the service worker has taken effect. Limbo indefinitely? No, that depends, like I said, that depends on what your delete cache policy is like. But yes, the service worker will not be active. But let's say if you have written some code which says, keep refreshing the cache or the existing cache and service worker sees it has nothing to handle, it will go into terminated mode, like I showed you in the life cycle. When it goes into terminated, the next service worker can then take effect. Make sense? Basically, you can even if you have new code, you cannot just close down the existing service worker if it's being used. You have to wait for a good time when reliably it can be closed and the user will not be impacted because they're still using it. Okay, so we do the install step, we cache all the URLs which we mentioned, so index, favicon, main.js, main CSS, everything. And yeah, let's do a hard refresh so that 453 becomes immediately active. And you'll see that the cache storage now has data in it, right? It has our tag name, my site cache one, which we had put, and you can see all the things which we asked it to cache. They're all here now, favicon, index, main, user, DL, with the content size, content length, response, everything is here. So now what we'll do is we'll go and we'll switch off our HTTP server. So I'll just kill it. So you can see it stopped. And if I go back to my page and I refresh, it still doesn't reload. So why did this happen, right? So even though we cached a few details, Actually, I'll have to debug this myself. Live demos are always fun. What did I miss? Install step. No, without even that, it should work. I never installed it, did I? Yes, I never installed the app. Let's do that. So let's start the server again. Let's refresh. Let's start afresh. Okay, let's just delete everything. There's my clear storage, clear site data, unregistered service workers, clear everything. So we've removed and we're starting from a very fresh start now. Install event is there. Main.js. My add button is also not showing up. It should have shown up by now. What did I miss? I put the manifest, I put the main.js, the main.js registered the service worker. Did it register? Yeah, it did register with the scope as expected. Debug this. All right, I have run into a problem where my plus button for the service worker for my installable app is not showing up. Wonder why. Okay, let's go through the rest of the code. Maybe there's something which I've missed, which will come later. Oh, I think this much is enough. Registration scope, it registered. Manifest is there. It's fine. Let's proceed, and we'll come back to where I missed a step. There's usually a plus button that lost connection. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. Maybe my other network lost. Okay, anyway. There's a plus button that should have come up here. For some reason, it's not coming. Maybe I denied installing the app sometime and it failed. Not sure. We'll figure out. Oh wait, unknown. No. Okay, never mind. Let's proceed for now. So wait until return. These are all fine. I think we should make offline from browser. Can you explain? No, this should work. I don't know why it's not working. Anyway, what happens next is when you have a fetch request, right? The service worker can intercept that fetch request. Oh, yeah, guys. Sorry, my bad. So even though you have things in cache, right? Oh, this is a problem. You have things in cache. Like I said, the service worker intercepts your existing requests. So right now we have not written code which says if somebody hits a particular request, this is what we want back. That is the problem. So we have cached things successfully, as you can see. Where is it? Application, right? So we have cached things as expected. But we have not written anything which says when a user is fetching the image, this is what you should be giving back. Right? Does that make sense? offline. Okay, perfect. So now what we'll do is we'll also write how to override the fetch, right? So the service worker says, by the way, self is used in a service worker to refer to the current worker. So that can be a web worker or a service worker. So self says, whenever somebody is doing a fetch call, you respond with a cache match if you can. And if you do indeed find something that was a hit, so that will go in the bin, otherwise it will go into the catch. That will be an error. So if the response is a cache hit, you return whatever you have in the cache. Otherwise, you make a regular fetch call with the event request. So if I remove this line here, if I don't have anything in the cache, it will never be able to make a network call. So I am saying in this particular policy, I'm saying first look in the cache. If you have from cache, return from cache. Otherwise, fetch from network. You can do the opposite. You can say always fetch from network and then cache it. And then if you're offline, then do from everything which you have to manage of how your caching policy works comes up here. So let's save this. Go back to our site. And now we'll refresh. Now we'll go switch off the network. Actually, now I think even if I switch off the network from here, it will still work. Now I refresh and it fails miserably. Okay. Maybe what I'll do is we ain't doing anything with the cache that we stored. So it's like mocking the fetch. Yeah, it's a proxy, right? It intercepts the fetch you've made, and then it responds with whatever you wanted to respond with. So I can write whatever I want there, but I'm saying if you put something in the cache, return that details for this particular request which was mapped. So it has cached everything that it accessed before, which it can serve in offline mode. What I'll do is I'll quickly come back online, and maybe if something's wrong with Chrome, it will get fixed. So I'll be right back. Give me a minute. Perfect. So that worked. Now we have the plus button. So now we can proceed. I think that is why it was not working. With some bug in Chrome, maybe. Or maybe I dismissed it too often in the morning. So it started not honoring the PWA. But anyway, as you can see this plus icon here, right? If I click it, it says, do you want to install the app? Are you able to see this? I'm so glad the code wasn't wrong. Okay, so we'll not install it, but what we'll do is we'll go and kill our server, come back and reload. And you can see that it is not failing immediately. It is doing something. Taking too long. Still going, wow. Application, service workers, active, running, update on reload should have been off. Let it die out. Not sure why it's not reloading. I'll just close this. Go to sources, go to application, switch it in offline mode, reload. You can see that when I reload, it still shows up, right? But there's some errors with the fetch calls. So that promise is not working, but you are seeing the image is still there, right? So now we are actually working in the offline mode. I switch off offline and I reload, you can see the name shows up. Offline details are now cached because the call was made when the network came. So now even though I'm offline, this name stays. See, I'm reloading again and again. Okay. Is my server running? Yes. Very good. So next thing which we have to do is we'll say, okay, when the service worker is activated, we'll just print a message saying it's waking up, and we'll say it has been activated. So that will print that. Quickly go over to index.html, I'll put two buttons. So I'll put a button to, let's put one button first. I'll put a button to show the install button. And the reason is this default behavior of confusing, a lot of people don't know about it. It's not the right experience, right? You land to a page, maybe you have to pay your bank details, or maybe let's say you're transferring money to your friend, or maybe to your parents or something like that, and you have to immediately come to the site and quickly make the transfer and be done with it. At that point, if these things start popping up in your face, do you want to do this? Do you want to subscribe to notification? Do you want to do this? It's very annoying, right? It takes away your clicks away from the things you care about into things you don't want to be doing right now. So we don't typically want this to be the user experience. We want them to finish their job. Maybe they're here to book some tickets for the train, which is important, or maybe they're booking some hospital appointment, something like that. Once it is done and you know the user is free based on their actions in the context, that is when you say, hey, would you like to follow up with updates to this transaction, let's say, where your money is going. And if you want to do that, install our PWA. Now that is a good experience, right? Because the user now has some vested interest in following up. So the user says, maybe I do want to follow up. Okay, I'll install the app. Right? So we have to nudge the user at the right times. So in order to do that, we'll create our own button, just as an example. What we'll do is we'll capture the event for the install trigger. And the way you do that in the main thread, right? Not in the service worker, in your window thread, in your window, in your main JavaScript, just before installing, when the install prompt comes, you will prevent that from happening. You will hide your button and you will store a reference to the install event, right? So I am using let here for the capture event, and I'm storing it to be used later whenever I want. Maybe it happens after the user has finished transaction. Maybe it happens after the user is on the site for 10 seconds. Those are my rules. So in my case, I'm just saying if the user clicks my install button, that is when you prompt the user to install the app. And based on what they do with that choice, you show what choice they've given, right? So I've basically taken control on when the install prompt should show up. And that's you can provide a good experience to the user. So you can see that install button is here. When the service worker gets registered, right? Just before the install. Why is this not disappearing? Before install prompt. Cannot read prompt of undefined. What broke this time? Basically, my install button should have hidden itself. My install button. Let's come up here. Let's do a hard refresh. Console.log. My install button is not defined. What? My install btn. Oh, sorry, my bad. Window, okay. It's a JavaScript bug. Okay, I'm saying I hide my button. Yes. Simple typo. Okay, so I reload the page. You see that there's an install button here, right? Everything is loading. Service worker registered. Why is the before event not firing? My install button is my install button. It should be hidden. Okay, let's see what happens when I click it. Yeah, see when I click it, it immediately pops this button up, right? And I dismiss it. So you're saying the user dismissed it. Now, if the user dismisses it, please, honor that and don't keep triggering that in future versions when they come back. Now it's working as expected. Okay, good. So basically what I'm saying is you can control at what point you should be letting the user install your PWA. So now let's actually go ahead and install our PWA. So when I click install, you can see that it shows up as a Chrome app, right? And it should also show up. Yeah, there you go. See, you can see it in the desktop here. And this is now, I'm going to close this. It's already gone from my browser. Now, let's say if I'm doing something else, right? And I want to access my app I can click it from as a Chrome app and it opens up outside the browser in its own place. With the theme, I gave it the blue color, title. The address bar is no longer there. The navigation controls are no longer there. This is now looking like a desktop app. And this can work offline and the user can immediately get to it. It has access to push notifications. This is a standalone app now. It's installed. Like if somebody sees this, they don't really know that this is actually a browser, right? You feel like it's a native app. And this is all built with our web technologies. And on phones, it will be even better because on phones, this will go into your home screen. It will give you shortcuts. It can show up in notification tray. It can show up in as a share target. So when you share to an app, you can even say share to real dev squads PWA, and you can control what happens when you share an image, what happens when you share a text. Like everything you can do with a phone app, you now get to control with the PWA. Most of it, not all, sorry, most of it. Most of the important use cases. All right. Let me quickly show you notifications. So for notifications, you have to use the JavaScript API of notification to first request the permission to show notifications. So let's go ahead. I'll close the PWA. I'll go back to the browser. Localhost 8080. Now see, when I come here the first time, I reload the page. Maybe I already given it permissions. Site setting notification is allowed. Okay. So if it's not allowed, let me clear everything and show you. Go to application, clear storage, clear everything, and then refresh. Right. So right now the notifications are allowed for this ask. Let's move to ask. So let's reload. So it's saying, do you want to show notifications on this page, right? And we'll say, okay, allow this to the user, because we want to be able to trigger the notifications and we can capture that the user granted those notifications, permissions. So we'll create a simple notification. It will say new user joined real dev squad. Or let's say instead of alert, say RDS new user. We can give more notification options. So we can put a body message, what logo to show in the notifications. If you're on phone, you can do a vibrate pattern. So this is 200 milliseconds of vibrate on, 100 milliseconds of off, 200 of on, 50 of off, 300. So it can form like a tune of vibration if you want. Some data to associate with the notification for later, and some actions if you want to give like a checkbox and dismiss or some buttons of your own which do something specific from a notification tray. We can pull the notification down and do more options, right? Something similar to that. And then we'll actually display the notification. So right now I'll create a new button. When you click that button, it will just call this function which will display the notification. Notification will see the permission if it is granted. Then it will go to the service worker and basically show our notification to us. Right? I know a lot of steps, but they're pretty, if you see this code later again and you try it out, it will make a lot more sense. Basically what you're saying is get access to the registered service worker. And when you get that access, ask it to show us a notification. Right? It's a notification API and you're passing the details for that notification. So let's go up here, reload. And the problem is it will say add event listener of null because we've not created the button which we should have for the sending the notification. So now I'll create that button, which will, I get a reference to it here, document.query selector, my notification button. Come back here, clear everything, close this and reload. So now I have another button here which says send notification. And you can see granted. So basically it says that the user has already granted permission for notifications. So I click send notification and wait. And wait. Why did this also fail? Okay, let's see. Notification, display, permission granted, navigate to the service worker, .then. So is the promise not resolved yet? Do a hard refresh. Oh, service worker just got registered. Okay. One hidden. Something is wrong with my browser today. notification message with options. Let me remove these actions for now. Squad size, logo.png. I have logo.png. Okay, there goes nothing. Maybe I'm not taking this correctly. That would be shameful. Granted permission. Let's wait for, my computer is also very slow. It's a very old MacBook, 2012 model. So that also can cause a little bit of problems every now and then. Let's see. Okay, so the event is triggering, but the notification is not showing up. Wonder why. Allow. Yeah, my browser doesn't want to work today. It does work. I've tried in the morning. Maybe I tried too much, so I don't know. Did I hit some limit? In HTML page, button is named correctly. I can see the console log showing when I call it. Let's just close this and try again. Send notification. Nope, does not want to work. Display notification permission is granted. Navigator tries to get this. Yeah, of course. I've asked the service worker to send the notification, but I have not added that in the service worker itself. Well, these are just the handlers though. Now, this should still have worked. Yeah, not sure. These are just the handlers of what happens when you click a notification. We can skip this. Let me get this notification warning working in another 1 minute or two. If it doesn't work, we'll get back to the PPT. This is basically the last step, getting the notification to work with service workers. Once you do that, and I know this code works because I've tried it in the morning, but for some reason my browser wants to embarrass me at this point. Okay, that was pretty much it. So let's just try disconnecting our server and see if our app still kind of shows up. Try and comment a great idea. Why did I not think of that? Why switched off my server? So I say, okay, localhost, send notification. Nope. Okay, another port. That's also another great idea. 8081. Yeah, something wrong with the browser today. Okay, never mind. I'll debug this later. But basically, this was one of our last steps. So send notification would have sent a little notification here saying this is the app, and there, okay, allow notifications. Let's install it as well. Install. Comes up here as real Discord 2. Let's open it and let's say send notification. Oh, I know why. Because before starting the presentation, I disabled my notifications in the tray. You see this here? I had option clicked it so that if somebody sends a chat message to me, it doesn't interrupt the screen share. So if you do that, obviously no notification. There you go. There are the notifications. Oh God. Problems you get last minute. Yeah, there, it's working. Okay, so you can see it's giving you the logo, it is giving you some actions, it's giving you the name, the alert, the everything, right? Cool. So basically, when you have notifications triggering in, you can now re-engage the user, right? So maybe you are transferring money to your friend, you can send a message saying money reached user's bank, money reached user's account, or if you're booking tickets, you can say our movie starts up tomorrow, do you want to watch a trailer? Or if you have one of the favorite use cases I have is my airline tickets, right? I can have my QR code for my boarding pass available on my phone at all times in my PWA. So when I reach a gate, I can just open up that image of that QR code and scan it without worrying about if I have network or not. So that is a very quick way of setting up a basic service worker. Then there are like some things you can do to like control the notifications. This is there now. You can maybe see it in the video later. And basically it does nothing. It says if you click a notification, You can like read the action of that notification and do certain things with it, open up a new window maybe, or if you close the notification, you can handle something there. Like basically you get to track what people are doing with your notifications. All right. So yeah, try it out. Set up a very simple PWA, and then from there APIs and try to get more things working. But if you get this much done, you have almost good half understanding of PWAs. Right. Let's quickly go through the rest of the things. So, like I said, right, PWAs, they help businesses to grow. So there was research done which said if your load time of the website goes from 1 second to 2 seconds, the bounce rate increases by 123%. And this is something I think all of us agree with as users as well as developers, right? The longer it takes for our page to load, the more the user is going to not stick around. So speed of loading the page is very, very important. So eBay actually decided to increase the speed of their site. And from their research, they noticed that every 100 milliseconds of load time that they shaved off from their loading, it increased adding to cart by 0.5%, which is huge, right? In scale of eBay, that makes them a lot of money. So yeah, and if you have things already available offline and you open it, you can instantly see it without waiting for the network call. So that saves you even more time. And there can be a lot of predictive loading that you can do. So you can say, okay, if this user is watching these 4 products today, what we'll do is we can also load the 5 products they might see in future, maybe based on ML algorithm, or maybe based on recommendation, or maybe based on popular items, whatever it is. So the user comes back to the app next time, you show them those 5 items first, right? And then you show them the rest of the things. So they're like, wow, there is already something to engage with. Maybe I'll add this to cart. Or when they don't have network, let's imagine being able to shop when you don't have network. You're adding things into your cart, and when network becomes available, you get a push notification saying network is now there. You can, complete the payment and get your items delivered. Do you want to do it now? That's a good user experience, which helps you do something on an offline mode, and then we're able to send something. Avinash is saying watching social dilemma and Netflix. Those are evil companies, right? Those are companies which are stealing away our attention. But if your apps are letting you be productive and get good experience, and they're actually doing you good, right? In case of Flipkart, in case of Swiggy, you are paying for your services. You are not the product. You are paying for the product. So if you're able to save time, that they're letting you do things more easily and more quickly. So maybe they do not fall in the social dilemma sphere. Oyo, right? Oyo also moved to a PWA, and what they noticed was really amazing. They noticed like 4x growth on their daily active users, to more than 2 times the conversion, more than 80% reduction in their, not more than, about 80% reduction in their homepage load, a 76% improvement in their navigation time. So time taken for people to like find different things around. And so what Oyo did is they took this PWA, put it into a shell called TWA, Trusted Web Apps, or something like that, right? They were able to launch this on the Android Play Store. And that app was less than 900 KBs compared to the typical 30 MBs, 20 MBs, or something like that. So because India is a developing market, being able to have small app sizes offers a lot of value in return. Indonesia, India, Pakistan, Philippines, all these countries, right, which do want to get on the digital bandwagon, but still hasn't reached that level of network yet. Yeah, less than 900 KBs. That's their full app. If they wanted, they could have done a 100 KB app and then progressively cached it as they went along, which they still did with Lite. A lot of companies are now moving toward the Lite versions of their apps. Right? OLX also did a PWA. They saw 23% less time in TTI. Does anybody know what TTI is? 80% reduction in bounce rates. 80%, right? Reduction in bounce rates. 146% CTR on ads, so click-through rates. Time to interaction, absolutely. So that's basically from the time taken for your app to become interactive, so the user can actually use it from the time they actually see it. So yeah, they reduced that, and there was a lot more re-engagement. A lot of Lite apps are PWAs. Twitter moved to a PWA, and then the experience was so good that they've opened it up to the entire audience. They had like 65% more pages that were being seen. They had 75% more tweets going out. 20% decrease in bounce rate, and reducing the size of their app by over 97%. Imagine, being one of the development teams who can say, you know what, we'll create a better app that is 97% smaller than the existing app, but with the same features. So that's what the Twitter team did, which was really good. There is a Tokyo Stock Exchange who had like organic traffic grow by more than 2 times, almost 60% more subscriptions, 50% more daily active users. So Ankit is saying, why do Flipkart or Amazon don't do it? Yes, they do it. They do have PWAs. Hulu had 27% increase in their return visits. Carrefour is like a supermarket chain in France. So they also moved to a PWA version. And what they did is they started re-engaging users with push notifications. So when somebody was filling items in their cart and maybe like stop, they would send a properly timed, this maybe falls in the social element kind of the thing which you mentioned. But basically they're able to like re-engage the user and say, hey, do you want to maybe buy these items or do something there? And they're able to like get their conversion rate to 4x. So the question is, how do the businesses measure their success, right? How can you like go to your business and say, I'll create PWAs, and that will in turn make the company succeed? There are multiple ways, multiple factors. These are just like some of them. There are obviously going to be more. You can talk about time spent on your service, hashtag social dilemma again, reduce bounce rates, conversion rates, returning visitors. Like there are like a lot of objective metrics that you can put. And once you create those metrics for your company, right? Maybe it's the performance budget where it's time to interactive, or maybe it's the size of the app. You can take that, you can do an A/B, and you can correlate the benefits of the PWA features you put out versus the new revenue or the new user retention that is coming in. So you can relate them and say, okay, when the app, the size, like eBay did, right? Every 100 milliseconds that was reduced, 0.5% increase in their add to cart. So you can create those very objective metrics to give to your businesses. So maybe it's time to like start thinking about those as well. We can't always wait for the business to tell us what we need to do. We are the technical experts. If we know certain solutions, we have to give those inputs to them saying, we can make this happen. How do we make this happen, right? You need to be more of a problem solver, more of a value add than just a simple code monkey. So then also the question is, when do you tell the user to install, right? So like I said, maybe you can say when the user has spent enough time. There's always going to be a category of users. There are going to be some very hardcore users who will install 100 MBs of app, right? And there are going to be some users who will just lurk around. And for them, PW is also not going to be enough. But there's going to be a middle category always who want to be just enough invested, but not make that long-term commitment. So for them, PWA installations is a very good way to go. There you say, okay, if the user is spending enough time, or if they've completed a meaningful action, right? If let's say they've gone to book my show and they've booked a ticket, then you say, okay, do you want a reminder to come and maybe like, tell you which of your friends are going or something like that? Download our app. Or if your upcoming train or bus or something, red bus maybe, then you say, okay, do you want to like see the progress of where your bus is? Install our PWA. So at that point, when you give user that context of why they should install, they're more likely to install than when they come to your site to see it and you're like, okay, just install. Right? And also you have to honor whatever they've said before. So if previously they've said, I'm not interested in installing this, every time they come back, please don't make them install or ask them to install. Don't annoy them. Yes. Like don't interrupt the user in doing what they're doing. Let them finish what they're doing and then give them a good reason to install. Now, where and how can you nudge the user? So there are multiple ways you can like decide where to put your buttons for installing the app, right? Like I created a simple button and then linked it. You can do that in hamburger menu. It can be part of your feed. It can be part of your landing page. It can be a part of your bottom screen. It can be on the top bar somewhere in a premium place. It can be small install banner. Like I think install banner is a very common thing many of us have seen for installing apps, right? You go to a website and it says download our app. So similarly, you can do for the PWA as well. We get to decide what that UX is going to be like, and we have full control over it. So we have to create this in a way that makes sense for our business. There are some examples of where the install button shows up, right? You can like have the install button like in the address bar, like we saw right now. You can have the home screen, add to home screen on phone, showing up on phones. You can have like, you can create your own custom banner where you can have a big install button, kind of like how we did it. It can be a very nice looking UX of with context of why you should install it, right? For example, if it's a music or a podcast, say play music anywhere offline, install. So key takeaways: don't get in the user's way, right? People go to websites. Like websites are supposed to be fast, quick, and productive. People want to do something, that's why they have gone to the URL. Don't give them all these unnecessary things to do before they can get to their task. Let them finish what they want to do, then offer them whatever nice things you have in mind. Offer the right kind of value to the right user. Don't create channel conflicts. Channel conflicts happen when you tell a user to install the PWA of, let's say you go to OYO, right? And you say, okay, install our PWA. And OYO also has an app. OYO is a bad example because they moved to Lite completely. Let's say Flipkart. Flipkart says install my PWA, but another website says install my app. So you're creating channel conflicts for the same company. So what you do is in PWA, there is in the manifest field, there is a place where you can put related apps as a field. So when related apps as a field is set to true, I believe it's a Boolean, there's a Boolean value somewhere. Then it says, okay, I will prioritize native apps over PWAs and I'll not show the PWA banner. So there are ways of the same company saying, okay, if my company's app is installed, don't nudge the user to install PWA because the native app will probably give more benefit to this hardcore user. Focus on FIRE, right? Those four tenets of a PWA: fast, installable, reliable, engaging. So here's a fun fact, right? That dinosaur game that comes up when you don't have internet, right? You might, I think many of us would have seen this and played this over here. That game is played 270 million times a month. That means 270 million times a month, people are seeing a broken page because there is no internet. So if you had a PWA installed, you could have offered value to that user who's right now seeing nothing on the page. It can be as simple as a very simple content to be shown to them, right? That is wasted space that is going for that user. Excuse me. So this is something to think about, and maybe this is happening with your company as well, right? So see what is it that as a PWA you can maybe give to your users where they get value and they want to stay more engaged with your company. So where should you start? Learn PWAs from the usual documentation, of course, but there's a code labs on developers.google.com. They walk you through different steps of creating PWAs and teaching you like basic fundamentals of what a PWA should look like. Yeah, Workbox. I think Yash mentioned Workbox. Workbox helps you have quick start with the service workers caching policies. So, quickly you can like get up and running. When your app becomes more complex, then you can take that script. It's kind of like you can use the default config for Webpack in your React app. And then when things become big, then you start tweaking Webpack yourself, something very similar with Workbox. The dev tools, right, which are there, they have support for service workers. They audit them really well. If you use Lighthouse before, you will see it complains when you don't have a service worker, when there's no PWA. And a regular, Chrome dev tools, they are always going to be your friend. And when nothing works, make sure that you have notifications on from your OS, and also close your Chrome browser and try again. Network tab. So network tab also has, so when you serve from the service worker, where you have the initiator, right, you can actually see what files got served offline and what files came from the network. So network tab also can help you decide what came from service worker. Application we've been using very extensively today. You can see what we've been doing with that. Performance can help us with other stuff later. The performance tab will help us with regular websites anyway. MDN docs, definitely. Yeah, don't, like I keep saying, don't skip learning JavaScript. Please learn JavaScript properly. That will help you in the long run as a web developer. Don't just jump to a framework and stick with it. There are some references. If you want to take a screenshot, I'll wait for 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Questions. Yes, I see a lot of questions are coming up. So let's go through those questions. Anyway, before we move to questions, thank you all for listening and being patient and being interactive. That was a lot of fun. I'm Ankush Darkar, almost everywhere. And if you have any questions or doubts, either the Recro Discord or the Real Discord, very active there, or LinkedIn or Twitter. Okay.
Okay, so Ankush, shall I start with the questions?
Yes, let's see the questions.
And before I do that, it was a really great presentation. And no matter if the code wasn't working in between, it was really great to see you do the live coding. And let's start with the questions now.
Sure.
Okay, so as I told the audience that if they want a particular question to be answered first, they need to upvote it. And funny is that they have upvoted one question which is actually not of like related to this topic. So would you like me to read out that first, or we can take the rest first?
Let's do that question in the end so that people who are not interested in that can leave and we can just like focus on the topic at hand first.
Okay, so I'll start with the next question. So it is, are there any specific owners of apps that are ideal candidates for PWA conversion?
I mean, I think if your app has anything that can be consumed once the request is made and it's not going to change for a while, it's not very real time in nature, right? It's like semi real time. So maybe like something that can stay valid for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, something of that nature, then that becomes a good candidate for PWA. Provided you have the proper UI in place to mention that to the user, right? Okay, last known price of the stock this much, updated 24 hours ago. So the user is aware that when these details were changed. So I think any app that has content that can be consumed, and if there's content that can be consumed for long intervals of time, that becomes a good candidate for PWAs as well.
Yeah. Okay. So
and any app which has to do with productivity, right? Where people maybe like write some documents or write some content, write markdown, whatever it is, where they're creating content, that should always be a PWA so that they can continue in their offline time. And when the network comes back up, it gets uploaded. Maybe a graphic illustrator, a drawing app, or anything that can, once downloaded, they can continue working on. Productive apps, I think, are a good candidate as well.
Okay. So next question we have is, can we have dynamic logo for different URL like abc.com/client1 or abc.com/client2?
Dynamic logo for different URL. I think in that case, you'll have to register different service workers because, like I said, right, there's an optional scope parameter for a service worker. So if you want 2 different logos like that and you want 2 different installable apps, you'll have to install 2 service workers. Logo dynamic, I think the logo is more size based, not route based. So I don't think that is possible. I may be wrong.
No worries. Thank you for that. Can we also have fingerprint-based authentication?
Not yet. Okay. Not yet. And I think based on the priority, it's not there even in the discussions right now. There are other authentication methods being proposed, but not with the fingerprint.
Okay. Next is where PWAs work best and where we should go with the hybrid or native apps.
PWAs work best when the user is not willing to commit full time to downloading the native app. Or maybe the native app is not available for their system, right? The iOS developer has created an iOS app for that company, but not the Android app. And the website exists. Like, for example, Dropbox, right? Dropbox has an excellent web app. So good that I don't think any of us have downloaded the Dropbox desktop client. And I mean, I've seen some people do it, but rarely people do it because You can do most of the things from Google Drive. Another example. How many people here have Google Drive installed as a desktop app instead of using the website? So where the user wants to use something really quickly and just forget about it, PWA app becomes very good. Native apps are where the user wants to engage, wants the app to let them know that they're supposed to engage with the app, and they want the data there all the time and really quickly on phones. This is the whole thing about PWA. They bridge the gap so much that it's really a question of preference at that point, whether you want to like install a big app and have everything available, or you want to install a PWA and access it from time to time. But I think we'll reach that point where PWA will like just be as good as native, where that question will become irrelevant. At this point, I don't have a good answer, to be honest.
Okay. Next is on the point where you were explaining that we just can't load new service worker with updated code until the old one finishes or dies due to cache deletion. What if we want to force update the service worker to fix an important bug? I think we can use workbox strategies for this.
No, that is workbox strategies will apply for the data, right? They will not apply for killing the service worker, will it? He's asking what happens when the service worker has to be restarted. I'm sure service worker will have some API where it can say, okay, kill yourself and start the next one. There might be some way available. I'm not looked into it. I mean, like as a quick hack, what I'll do is I'll just force refresh the page. I'll just call window.close, and then when next time user opens it, they'll have the new service worker. That's one way I can think. I'm pretty sure though there'll be more APIs available. And maybe Workbox also has it. I have not used Workbox that extensively.
Okay. So next we have is, can we dynamically add URLs to cache?
I don't think so. I think URLs have to be there in the service worker file from the beginning. No, what we can do is we can update the URLs because it's a JavaScript object and then call the cache add method again on it. Maybe that can work. I've not tried it. I don't know.
Okay. Next is, if resources are cached, how to make sure on the next production release the resources are updated?
Oh yeah, that is very easy. So like I said, right, in the .fetch, which when we use the fetch on the service worker, we write the way we want our request to be made. So whenever you make a call, it goes to the service worker. The service worker decides if it's going to make the call on network or if it's going to serve the cache. So in your policy, you can just say, okay, if the network is connected, always go to the production first and then update the cache. And then if it is offline, then only go to the cache. So that way resources will stay updated.
Okay. So next is, do we have separate code base for PWAs?
Absolutely not. The whole point of progressive web apps is that you have an existing web app and you're progressively able to enhance it. So if you start creating multiple code bases and trying to maintain them, you're just taking up more work for yourself and defeating the purpose of PWAs existing.
It's just a matter of caching the data we have, right? So to serve it offline.
Yes, but PWA by nature, right? It's progressive web apps, so it should, whatever you have, you should be able to enhance it. If you start creating a different code base, you've created two apps now, and you have to maintain them. You make one feature here, you have to put the other feature there also, and then defeats trying to move fast.
Next, what we have is, what should be the location of manifest.json?
Root directory is preferred, but I think it can be anywhere because it's href. Wherever I read, it said put it in the root location, but I think it's just href, so you can put it wherever you want. The service worker file has to be on root.
It can be in the public folder as well.
Yeah, it's an href, right? So I'm pretty sure it can go anywhere. But service worker file has to be on the root if you want to access the entire scope of the root. If you don't put it, if you put service worker in public, it can only access public and lower. It cannot access above the public folder.
Right. Next is PWA just the next iteration of web app, or it's completely different?
Where is that question?
Yash has asked this question. Is PWA it's just...
Okay.
It's the second question.
I can't see it.
Have
Maybe
you refreshed it?
refresh. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, I can see it now. Is PWA just the next iteration of web app, or it's complete? It's definitely not different, right? As I said, like PWA it creates what you know as an existing web developer. So you don't have to learn too many new things. So it's not completely different. It's probably the next iteration. Yeah, I'll call it a next iteration.
Okay. Next is okay, not related with PWA, but does installing two service workers means two different threads to be worked upon?
To be worked upon, I don't know, because if one of the thread is not working, it will just get terminated. But yes, two different threads will exist in the browser containers.
Next
Every
is
service
not a
worker has
question.
a separate scope.
Mhm. This is a repeated question. Can we have dynamic logo for different URL?
Different URLs. Okay.
Can you
Different
mention
URLs can have
drawback?
different logos. Yeah. Drawbacks of PWA compared to native apps. It doesn't have access to all the capabilities of the native yet. So like somebody asked about the fingerprint, right? That is one example. Face ID, fingerprint, those things are not yet available in the PWA. So that will take a hit.
Okay, so next is
And
again from.
and just a second. And also like some things, like for example, using the Metal framework on very high performance code, right? C++ code for some game, let's say. When you come to web app, things might get a little slow because JavaScript has to be compiled down to something better. So you might lose it can take a little bit of performance hit, not for most apps, but for some apps. Like games will be an example where it will be noticeable. But then again, in web itself, in the web ecosystem, they are moving so close to starting to run 3D games in a browser. So I wonder if that will also matter. But for now, yes, it can be a slight issue.
Okay, so the next is just want to ask the basic code file structure you showed us. Was you just creating a new folder and starting creating files, or is it like a base project similar to create React app?
So I created from scratch. I just created all the files as I needed them. But yeah, like I said, there's Workbox and there is another one, the Code Labs, right? You can check it out and see what the best standard practices are and follow those.
Okay, so next is okay, again off topic question, but it's complexity is 5, everything is fine, everything is cool. I want to know, is that a plugin or inbuilt in VS Code?
It's a plugin. I forget the name of that plugin. I'll ping. Just hit me on Discord. I'll find the name of that plugin and tell you.
Ankush, can we have the repository code?
I'll push it and post it in Discord. And Ashish in Real Dev Squad, we are going to convert realdevsquad.com into PWA. So you won't need the repository. You can just get practice there.
Okay. So next is, Ankush, are you planning to share the deck? The PPT,
Yes.
I guess. Yeah, that will share.
Yes.
Okay. Next is from Vineet. I'm more concerned with respect to OS handling of PWAs. For example, I have an PWA which is uploading a huge file to a server via streams. Now I switch to a different app and later clear my all memory. After some time, will I be able to resume back?
Yes. So now PWS has started using the background sync API. So things can happen in background based on when the OS makes it available. So that is also a possibility now. Regarding resume, I think even in Android, when something is happening and you kill it forcefully, right, you'll have to start afresh. It doesn't resume from where it left off. But if you leave it and the OS manages it, then it will resume from where it was. I'll have to look more into it, but background sync API is very similar to how you have things happening on phones right now.
Okay. So next is again from Yash. So from what I understood from your previous answers, if I have an existing web app, I can just make it converted to PWA. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So now is the main question, the most upvoted one.
Okay. Can you share your journey into Amazon Seattle? Okay. Um, so basically on LinkedIn, whenever recruiters reach out to you, even if you're not looking for a job, always keep networking so that when you are looking for, so best time to cultivate your network with recruiters is when you don't need them, right? When you need them and you are pinging frantically to every recruiter saying, I need a job, get me a job, get me a job, it's not really a good time to reach out. But when they need something and when you are keeping them, like you, even though you are not thinking of switching the job, but you are, maintaining, you are talking to them from time to time, like treating them as human beings, not as resources. That helps create a good bond, which later on can help you. And the second thing is, even if you are not looking, if you recommend other people who are looking and you can make that connection and they get their hire and the other person gets a new job, which they were not thinking about, right? And I do this many times where I make people leave their other jobs on to focus on something better because we have a very limited lifespan, right? We can't just stay at a place which is not offering us as much growth. It's better to like always make sure you push your friends and well wishers to better places in life as soon as possible, especially if you think they have the potential, right? Sometimes people need that additional push to make it in. So with those two things, I had a good array of recruiters that when I needed to switch jobs, I reached out saying, okay, I'm now looking. And big companies like Amazon, they're always constantly hiring, right? Because they keep growing, they keep coming out with more and more products. So they wanted to hire me in Bangalore, and I pushed for getting hired in the US, which is a little more difficult because they have to apply for a work visa, and they're like it takes a long time, right? So anyway, and you like if you know what you want, communicate, try to get it done, right? Try to work with them instead of against them. So ultimately, things happened. Flew down here for an interview in 2000 late 2018. Got the offer. They applied for my visa. So after leaving Hotstar, I was going to join here, but then COVID happened. Things got delayed, but then things cleared up a little bit. So now I'm here. So yeah, in terms of preparation, Amazon hires problem solvers. They're not married to any technology as such. So data structures, algorithms, system design, behavior interviews, and just some knowledge of what's happening in the engineering world. That's like they focus on like a well-rounded engineer instead of a typical React or a JS developer. I did use JS as my primary language for coding questions, but I also had other languages ready. I had Java ready, I had Python ready. So whenever they asked, I gave them choice, saying, okay, I can do them all. Which one should I do? They're like, which one are you most comfortable with? And then I went to JavaScript. I didn't go with the attitude saying, I only know JavaScript, so I'll only do JavaScript. Sometimes it's also good to give the interviewer options, right? Because interviews are boring for them, so let them also feel more in control. That helps. Yeah, that's a little bit of how I ended up here.
Ankush, there is one more question. Actually, it's a question and an argument both. So, yeah, it is Ankush in Android. At least if you start a background task using Work Manager, it runs in background even if you kill the app. From what he has experienced.
Okay, I've not tried that with PWA. Not sure what happens. We can give it a try. Maybe we can create a dummy app and kill it and see what happens. And maybe if it becomes a use case enough, it will come to the mainstream in future as well.
So, any more questions? I mean, we'll wait for like 2-3 minutes. If you have any questions, please shoot. Swaraj is asking you to take some rest now.
Thank you, Saraj. Okay, I think no more questions are coming up. We'll go to the lounge.
Yes, I think.
I'm awake. I made sure to be available because I know if I go to sleep, then maybe I'll miss this session.
Okay.
And tomorrow is Sunday, so.
Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for attending this session. It was a really interactive session, and we enjoyed a lot. And I hope and Ankush also enjoyed a lot. And Ankush, thank you so much. I mean, it's really wonderful to see how dedicated and how serious you are for like hosting sessions with us with Recro. And like everyone knows that it's early morning in Seattle and you're still working. And if everyone doesn't know, that I'd like to tell everyone that he was awake all night to prepare for this. And I can say that it was a hell great presentation, and I loved it, and I hope you guys loved it too. And if there were any issues, please let us know. I have shared the feedback form link, and we'll also be sharing the PPT word link as well. And later on, we'll also provide you with the GitHub code. So we also have shared the social links. You can connect with Ankush, with Recro, and on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, on WhatsApp, and as a bonus, we have the Discord link as well. If there are people you have not already logged in and not already connected with Ankush on his Discord server, please go and check it out and please sign up because there you can learn a lot of stuff. And thank you for coming to this session.
Okay, bye guys. Have a good weekend. I'll see you guys in the lounge.
Thank you, Ankush. Thank you all. Bye.
Okay, bye.